Welcome back. Now that you've got the fundamentals down, it's time to dive into the exciting world of educational philosophies. And we're starting with probably the most famous one, Montessori. You've definitely heard this name thrown around at playground conversations, but let me guess, you're not exactly sure what it means, right? But don't worry, by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to explain Montessori to your neighbors like a pro. First, let's talk about Maria Montessori herself, because her story is pretty incredible. Picture this. It's the early 1900s in Italy, and this woman becomes one of the first female doctors in the country. She starts working with children who have developmental delays and notices something fascinating. When given the right materials and environment, these kids could learn way more than anyone expected. She thinks, if this works for children with challenges, what could it do for all children? And boom, the Montessori method is born. Here's the core philosophy in a nutshell. Children are naturally curious and capable of directing their own learning when given the right environment and materials. Revolutionary concept for 1907 and honestly still pretty revolutionary today. The Montessori approach says follow the child instead of make the child follow. So what does this actually look like in a real classroom? Well, the first thing you'll notice is that it doesn't look like a typical preschool at all. Instead of tiny tables where everyone sits together for circle time, you'll see kids spread out around the room, working independently or in small groups on different activities. One child might be carefully pouring water from one pitcher to another, while another is tracing sandpaper letters with their finger, and someone else is probably building geometric shapes. The mixed-age classroom is huge in Montessori. We're talking 3, 4, and 5-year-olds all together. I know your first thought might be, won't the older kids be bored? Won't the younger kids get overwhelmed? But here's the magic. The older children become natural mentors and teachers, which actually reinforces their own learning. And the younger ones get to see what they'll be doing next year, which is incredibly motivating. Now, let's talk about those famous Montessori materials because they're genuinely fascinating. Everything is designed with what Montessori calls control of error, meaning kids can figure out for themselves if they're doing something correctly without needing an adult to tell them. Take the pink tower. It's a set of wooden cubes in graduated sizes. If a child tries to stack them incorrectly, the tower falls down. No teacher needs to say that's wrong. The material itself provides the feedback. The classroom is divided into 5 main areas, and this is where it gets really structured. There's practical life, things like pouring, cleaning, food preparation. These aren't just busy work, they're developing concentration, coordination, and independence. Then there's sensorial, where kids explore concepts like size, color, texture, and sound through hands-on materials. Mathematics in Montessori is absolutely brilliant. Kids learn numbers by actually handling quantities. Golden beads that represent units, tens, hundreds, and thousands. They can literally hold 1,000 in their hand and understand what that means before they ever see the numeral written down. It makes abstract concepts concrete. Language development happens through carefully sequenced progression. Kids start by tracing sandpaper letters while saying the sound. They're using sight, touch, and hearing simultaneously. Then they build words with movable alphabets before they can even write. Reading naturally follows because they already understand how sounds combine to make words. Cultural studies is where the kids explore geography, history, science, art, and music. They might walk on a floor map of the world or learn about different cultures through food, music, and stories. The goal is to help children understand their place in the world and develop respect for all living things. Here's what might surprise you about Montessori teachers. They're called guides instead of teachers, and their role is very different from what you might expect. They observe more than they instruct. They prepare the environment, demonstrate how to use materials, and then step back to let children explore independently. A good Montessori guide knows when to intervene and when to let a child struggle productively through a challenge. The daily rhythm is also unique. Instead of constant transitions between activities, children get long, uninterrupted work periods, usually 3 hours in the morning. This allows them to really dive deep in their interests and develop serious concentration. You might see a 4-year-old spend 45 minutes arranging or rearranging number rods, completely absorbed in understanding numerical relationships. Now, let's get real about cost, because Montessori schools aren't cheap. You're looking at anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 annually, and in some cities, it can go much higher. Why so expensive? Well, those beautiful wooden materials aren't cheap to buy or maintain. Teachers need specialized Montessori training, which is extensive and costly. And maintaining those carefully prepared environments with appropriate ratios takes resources. Most Montessori schools offer both half-day and full-day options. The half-day program typically follows a traditional Montessori model with that 3-hour work cycle. Full-day programs extend this with lunch, rest time, and often outdoor exploration or additional enrichment activities. Some schools operate year-round, while others follow a more traditional school calendar. What's typically included in your tuition? Montessori materials are obviously covered, and trust me, there are hundreds of them. Most schools include snacks, but meals vary widely. Some provide lunch, others ask you to pack it. Field trips and special events might be included or cost extra. Definitely ask about this up front. So, who thrives in Montessori? Independent kids who like to make choices absolutely love it. Children who get overwhelmed by too much stimulation often find the calm, orderly environment soothing. Kids who are naturally curious and like to explore things deeply do incredibly well. And interestingly, both introverted and extroverted children can thrive because they choose whether to work alone or with others. But here's the thing, Montessori isn't for every child or every family. Kids who really crave external validation and praise might struggle initially because Montessori focuses on internal motivation. Very social children who want constant interaction might find all that independent work isolating. And if your child thrives on variety and surprise, the structured progression of Montessori materials might feel limiting. From a family perspective, you need to be comfortable with the philosophy. Some parents worry that there isn't enough direct instruction or that kids are just playing all day. If you're looking for traditional academic preparation with worksheets and formal lessons, Montessori will feel foreign. But if you believe that children learn best through exploration and discovery, it might be perfect. Here's an insider tip for evaluating Montessori schools. Ask to observe during a work period, not just during arrival or outdoor time. You want to see children actually engaged with the materials. Are kids focused and purposeful? Are they wandering aimlessly? Are the guides observing and supporting, or are they just hovering and directing? A good Montessori classroom has a calm, productive buzz. Not silence, but purposeful activity. Also, ask about the school's fidelity to Montessori principles. Some schools use the Montessori name, but don't actually follow the method. Look for teachers with proper Montessori training. AMI or AMS credentials are the gold standards. Ask about mixed-age classrooms, 3-hour work periods, and whether children can choose their own activities. One more thing to consider: what happens after Montessori? Some children transition beautifully to traditional elementary schools, while others find the shift to more structured, teacher-directed learning challenging. Many families look for elementary schools that continue with progressive, child-centered approaches. It's worth thinking about your long-term educational plan, not just the preschool years. Waldorf Steiner education. All right, let's talk about Waldorf education, and I promise you, this is going to be unlike anything else we discuss in this course. Waldorf is basically the anti-Montessori in many ways, and that's not a criticism, they're just completely different approaches to honoring childhood and supporting development. Rudolf Steiner created this approach in 1919 in Germany, and his background was pretty eclectic. Philosophy, spirituality, education, even agriculture. He believed that children develop in very specific stages, and that rushing academic learning too early could actually harm their natural development. Revolutionary thinking for its time, and still pretty countercultural today. Here's the Waldorf philosophy in a nutshell. Children should be protected and preserved. Children under 7 shouldn't be pushed into formal academics because their brains aren't developmentally ready. Instead, they should be immersed in imagination, creativity, beauty, and wonder. Learning happens through imitation, rhythm, and hands-on experiences that engage all the senses. When you walk into a Waldorf preschool, you'll immediately notice it feels different. Think warm, cozy, and incredibly beautiful. Natural materials everywhere. Wooden toys, silk scarves, wool felt, cotton fabrics. The colors are soft and muted. Lots of pink and peach tones that Waldorf educators believe are soothing to young children. There are no plastic toys, no electronic gadgets, and definitely no screens. The daily rhythm is almost ceremonial. Every day begins and ends the same way, often with a song or a verse. There's a strong emphasis on seasonal celebrations and festivals, not just Halloween and Christmas, but harvest festivals, spring celebrations, and cultural traditions from around the world. This creates a sense of anticipation and connection to natural cycles that many kids find deeply satisfying. Let's talk about what children actually do in Waldorf preschool, because it might surprise you. A huge chunk of time is devoted to free play, but not the kind of free play you might imagine. Children play with simple, open-ended materials that require them to use their imagination. A piece of silk might become a river, a cape, or a fort roof. Wooden blocks aren't just blocks, they're houses, cars, food, or whatever the child's imagination creates. Storytelling is enormous in Waldorf, but these aren't picture books. Teachers tell stories from memory, often fairy tales and folk tales from different cultures. The children listen with their whole bodies, often acting out parts or joining in with repeated phrases. The same story might be told for weeks, allowing children to really absorb and internalize the narrative. Artistic activities happen daily: watercolor painting, drawing with block crayons, modeling with beeswax. But here's what's different. There's no pressure to create recognizable objects. Young children are encouraged to explore color, form, and texture for the pure joy of creation. You won't see any craft projects where everyone is making the same thing. Practical activities are huge too: bread baking, soup making, gardening, cleaning, simple woodworking. Children participate in real work that contributes to the classroom community. They're not pretending to cook in a play kitchen, they're actually helping prepare snacks for the classmates. This develops practical skills and a sense of meaningful contribution. Here's something that throws many parents. There are no formal academics in Waldorf preschool. No letter recognition, no counting worksheets, no sight words. Waldorf educators believe that pushing cognitive learning too early can interfere with imagination and creativity. Reading typically doesn't begin until first grade, and even then, it's introduced very gradually. The mixed age grouping works different than in Montessori. Children often stay with the same teacher for multiple years, creating deep, stable relationships. The teacher becomes like a beloved aunt or grandmother figure who really knows each child's personality and developmental journey. Nature is absolutely central to Waldorf education. Children spend significant time outdoors in all weather, and I mean all weather. They have proper rain gear and snowsuits because outdoor play happens rain or shine. Gardens are common, and children often go on nature walks to collect materials for seasonal crafts. Movement is woven throughout the day, but it's purposeful movement, not exercise for exercise's sake. Children might act out stories, practice traditional games, or do simple eurythmy, a movement art that Steiner developed. The goal is to help children feel comfortable and confident in their bodies. Now let's talk money, because Waldorf schools can be pretty expensive. You're looking at $10,000 to $20,000 annually, sometimes more in major cities. Why so costly? Well, maintaining those beautiful natural environments isn't cheap. Teachers need specialized Waldorf training, which is extensive. Class sizes are kept small, and all those natural materials and handmade toys cost significantly more than plastic alternatives. Most Waldorf preschools offer both half-day and full-day options, though the core program is usually half-day. Full-day programs typically extend with rest time, additional outdoor play, and sometimes more practical activities like extended cooking or gardening projects. Many schools follow a traditional school calendar with summers off, though some offer summer programs with a similar philosophy. What's typically included? All those beautiful art materials, seasonal celebration materials, and often snacks made from organic whole foods. Some schools include lunch, especially if it's prepared on-site with the children. Field trips are usually nature-based and might include visits to farms, gardens, or natural areas. So, who thrives in Waldorf? Creative, imaginative children absolutely love it. Kids who are sensitive to overstimulation find the calm, beautiful environment soothing. Children who love stories, art, and hands-on activities are in heaven. Kids who develop at their own pace without pressure to meet external benchmarks often flourish. But Waldorf definitely isn't for everyone. If your child is already reading at 3 or 4 and loves academic challenges, they might feel bored or frustrated. Very active kids who need lots of physical challenge might want more varied movement opportunities. And if your family values early academic achievement, the lack of formal learning might make you nervous. From a family perspective, you need to embrace the philosophy pretty wholeheartedly. Waldorf educators strongly discourage screen time even at home. They recommend natural toys over electronic ones, and they prefer that children not be exposed to adult concerns through news or inappropriate media. Some families find these recommendations supportive, while others feel they're too restrictive. Here's something important to understand about Waldorf. It's based on anthroposophy, Steiner's spiritual philosophy. While Waldorf schools are non-denominational, they're not completely secular either. There's a spiritual undertone that emphasizes wonder, reverence, and connection to something greater than ourselves. Most Waldorf schools are careful not to promote any specific religion, but the overall approach has what you might call a spiritual flavor. So, when evaluating Waldorf schools, look for that characteristic beauty and warmth in the environment. Are the materials natural and well-maintained? Do the teachers seem calm and nurturing? Is there a strong emphasis on rhythm and routine? Ask about teacher training. Authentic Waldorf teachers complete extensive preparation in child development and the Waldorf methodology. Also, ask about the transition to elementary school. Many children who attend Waldorf preschool continue in Waldorf elementary programs, where academics are introduced gradually starting in the first grade. But if you're planning to transition to a traditional elementary school, you'll want to understand how the school prepares children for that change. One other thing to consider: how do you feel about the later introduction of academics? Some parents worry that their children will be behind when they start kindergarten in traditional schools. Research suggests that children who start reading later often catch up quickly and may actually have advantages in comprehension and the love of reading. But this requires trust in the process, and not every family feels comfortable with that. Here's what's really beautiful about Waldorf when it works. Children develop a deep sense of wonder about the world, strong creative abilities, and often a real love of learning that lasts through their entire lives. They tend to be independent thinkers who aren't overly influenced by peer pressure, but it requires a family that's aligned with a philosophy and comfortable with a different approach to early childhood education. Reggio Emilia approach. Now, let's travel to northern Italy and explore the Reggio Emilia approach. And fair warning, this one might just blow your mind with how beautiful and child-centric it is. The story behind this approach is actually pretty moving, so stick with me here. After World War II, the town of Reggio Emilia was rebuilding, and the women of the community came together with a vision. They wanted to create something better for their children, schools that would ensure future generations would be tolerant, peaceful, and capable of critical thinking. They literally sold bricks and tanks left over from the war to fund their first school. Talk about turning swords into plowshares. Enter Loris Malaguzzi, a young teacher who was so inspired by what these mothers were creating that he dedicated his life to developing this approach. His central belief was that children are competent, curious researchers who can construct their own learning when given the right support and environment. Here's the heart of Reggio Emilia. Children have 100 languages to express their understanding of the world. We're not just talking about verbal language, but drawing, painting, sculpting, dancing, building, dramatizing, and countless other ways of communicating ideas and feelings. The role of educators is to listen carefully to these many languages and support children in developing them. When you walk into a Reggio-inspired classroom, the first thing you'll notice is how absolutely gorgeous it is. Light streams through large windows, plants bring nature indoors, mirrors reflect and multiply images, and children's work is displayed everywhere, not just hung on walls, but thoughtfully documented and presented like gallery exhibitions. The environment is often called the third teacher because it's designed to inspire, challenge, and support learning. Here's what makes Reggio truly unique. The curriculum emerges from the children's interests and questions. Teachers don't start the year with predetermined themes like all about community helpers or the four seasons. Instead, they observe what children are naturally curious about and then support deep investigations into these topics. Maybe the kids become fascinated with shadows or water or how buildings stay up. These interests become the foundation for weeks or months of exploration. Let's say a group of children becomes interested in birds after finding a nest on the playground. In a traditional preschool, this might become a week-long unit with bird crafts or bird books. In a Reggio approach, this could become a months-long investigation. Children might observe real birds, draw them, research different types, build birdhouses, create sculptures, interview bird experts, and document their learning in multiple ways. The adults support and extend the investigation, but the children drive the direction. Documentation is huge in Reggio Emilia, and I mean extensive documentation. Teachers carefully observe children's play, conversations, and work, taking photos, recording conversations, and collecting examples of their creations. This isn't just for cute keepsakes for parents, though those are nice too. The documentation helps teachers understand children's thinking and plan how to support their next steps in the learning. Projects in Reggio classrooms are collaborative and long-term. Children work together to solve problems, test theories, and create representations of their understanding. You might see a group spending weeks building a model city, constantly revising and improving their design based on new discoveries or ideas. The process is as important as the product, maybe even more important. The role of families is central to Reggio Emilia. Parents aren't just invited to participate, they're considered essential partners in their children's education. Schools often have family meetings to discuss children's learning, parents contribute their expertise to projects, and family culture and values are woven into the curriculum. It's truly a community approach to education. Art materials in Reggio classrooms are incredible. High-quality paints, clay, wire, fabric, natural materials, and tools that allow for real creation. Children aren't given coloring sheets or crafts with predetermined outcomes. Instead, they have access to professional quality materials and the freedom to use them in their own ways. The results are often breathtakingly beautiful. Technology is used thoughtfully in Reggio schools, not for drill and practice, but as another tool for research, documentation, and creation. Children might use digital cameras to document their investigations or computer programs to create presentations about their learning. Now, let's talk about costs, because authentic Reggio Emilia programs tend to be expensive. You're looking at $12,000 to $18,000 annually, sometimes even more. Why? Those beautiful environments don't maintain themselves. The extensive documentation takes time and skill. Small class sizes and multiple teachers per classroom drive up costs, and those high-quality art materials aren't cheap. Most Reggio programs offer full-day options since they emerge from the need to support working families. The day typically includes long periods for project work, time for reflection and discussion, meals prepared on site when possible, and outdoor exploration. Many schools operate year-round with vacation breaks. What's included in the tuition? Usually, all those amazing art materials, the extensive documentation of your child's learning, and often meals prepared fresh daily. Some schools include field trips related to ongoing projects, visits from community experts, and family events. So, who thrives in Reggio Emilia? Children who are naturally curious and love to explore ideas deeply are in heaven. Kids who are expressive and creative flourish with all those different languages available to them. Children who enjoy collaborative work and problem solving do beautifully. And interestingly, children who might struggle in more academic settings often shine when they can show their intelligence through art, building, or other nonverbal means. The approach works well for families who value creativity, critical thinking, and collaboration over traditional academic skills. If you love the idea of your child developing into a thoughtful researcher or creative problem solver, Reggio might be a perfect fit. But it's not for everyone. Families who want clear academic milestones and structured learning progressions might feel frustrated by the emergent curriculum. Children who thrive on routine and predictability might find the project-based approach unsettling. And if you're looking for traditional school readiness skills, you might worry that not enough attention is paid to letters, numbers, and formal academics. When evaluating Reggio-inspired schools, look for evidence of that careful documentation. Are children's words and ideas captured and displayed? Do you see evidence of long-term projects, not just daily activities? Are the materials beautiful and accessible? And most importantly, do the teachers seem genuinely curious about children's thinking? Ask about how they balance individual interests with group investigations. In authentic Reggio programs, children's personal interests are honored even within collaborative projects. Also ask about family involvement. It should be meaningful and ongoing, not just occasional volunteering. Here's something important to understand. Very few schools outside of Italy are truly Reggio Emilia schools. What you'll find are Reggio-inspired programs that incorporate some of the principles, but may not follow the approach completely. That's not necessarily bad, but you want to understand what you're getting. The beautiful thing about Reggio Emilia when it works well is that children develop incredible confidence in their ability to learn, create, and solve problems. They become comfortable expressing their ideas in multiple ways and collaborating effectively with others. They develop what educators call a learning disposition. Basically, they learn how to learn and love doing it. HighScope curriculum. Now let's talk about HighScope, and I have to tell you, this approach has some of the most impressive research backing of any early childhood program. We're talking about longitudinal studies that followed children for decades, and the results are pretty mind-blowing. HighScope was developed in the 1960s by David Weichart in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and it grew out of what's called the Perry Preschool Project. Weichart and his team wanted to test whether high-quality early childhood education could really make a difference in the lives of children from low-income families. So they carefully designed a program, implemented it with scientific rigor, and then followed those children for the next 40 years. Here's what they found, and this is going to sound almost too good to be true. The children who attended the HighScope preschool were more likely to graduate from high school, more likely to have jobs as adults, more likely to own homes, and significantly less likely to be arrested or have other legal troubles. The economic benefits were so substantial that researchers calculated a return of $7 to $12 for every dollar invested in the program. No wonder early childhood educators get excited about HighScope. So what exactly did they do that was so effective? The core of HighScope is something called the Plan, Do, Review sequence, and it's brilliantly simple. Every day, children spend time planning what they want to do, and then they carry out their plans, and finally, they reflect on what happened. This might sound basic, but it's actually developing incredibly important executive function skills. Things like working memory, cognitive flexibility, and self-control. Here's how it works in practice. During planning time, children meet in small, consistent groups with an adult. They talk about what they want to do during the upcoming work time, maybe build blocks, paint a picture, or play in the house area. The adult asks gentle questions to help children think through their plans. What materials will you need? Who might you work with? What do you think might happen? Then comes the work time, usually about 45 to 60 minutes where children carry out their plans. But here's what's different from free play. Children are expected to stick with their plans and work purposefully towards their goals. Adults move around the room as partners in play, asking questions, offering support, and helping children solve problems when they get stuck. Review time brings everyone back together to talk about what actually happened. Children share their experiences, describe problems they encountered, and reflect on whether their plans worked out as expected. This isn't show and tell, it's genuine reflection that helps children become more intentional learners. The classroom environment in HighScope is carefully organized into distinct interest areas: blocks, house area, art, books, toys, and games, and usually a computer area. Each area has clear boundaries and is stocked with open-ended materials that support different types of learning. Children can choose where to work, but they're expected to clean up and put materials back where they belong. HighScope has very specific key developmental indicators, 58 of them to be exact, that guide teachers' observations and planning. These aren't checklists or things to drill children on. Instead, they're research-based indicators of healthy development that help teachers know what to look for in sport. Things like child uses tools for writing and drawing, or child solves problems encountered in play. The adult-child interaction style in HighScope is distinctive. Adults are encouraged to share control with children, communicate as partners rather than directors, and use encouragement rather than praise. When conflicts arise, and they will, adults use a 6-step problem-solving approach that helps children learn to resolve their own disputes peacefully. Small group times happen daily where teachers present planned activities that introduce new materials or concepts. But even these are child-centered. Teachers might introduce a new type of block or demonstrate a simple science experiment, but children are free to explore and modify the activity based on their interests. Large group times include music, movement, and interactive games that build community and support different types of learning. You might see children acting out stories, playing singing games from different cultures, or doing movement activities that support spatial awareness. Now, for the practical stuff. HighScope is used in many different settings, from Head Start programs to private schools, so costs vary widely. In public programs, it might be free or low cost. In private schools, you're looking at $8,000 to $14,000 annually. The approach is designed to be implemented in half-day or full-day programs, and it works well with different schedule options. What's typically included depends on the setting. In public programs, meals are usually provided. In private schools, it varies. The HighScope materials and training are significant investments for schools, so that's reflected in the overall program quality and cost. So, who thrives in HighScope? Children who benefit from structure but also want some control over their learning love the plan, do, review approach. Kids who are developing self-regulation skills do well with the consistent routines and expectations. Children who enjoy both independent work and collaborative activities find good balance in HighScope classrooms. The approach works well for families who want research-backed practices and clear developmental goals. If you like the idea of your child developing planning skills, persistence, and problem-solving abilities, HighScope delivers on those goals. It's also great for families who want some academic preparation without losing the benefits of play-based learning. When you're evaluating HighScope programs, ask to observe during the plan, do, review sequence. You should see children making genuine choices and talking thoughtfully about their plans. Adults should be participating as partners, not directors, and the classroom should feel purposeful but not rigid. Ask about teacher training too. Implementing HighScope well requires specific preparation. Teachers should understand the key developmental indicators and be skilled at asking open-ended questions that extend the children's thinking. One thing that's great about HighScope is that it prepares children well for traditional elementary schools while still honoring developmentally appropriate practices. Children learn to make plans, follow through on commitments, and reflect on their learning, skills that serve them well in any educational setting. Bank Street approach. Last, but definitely not least, let's explore the Bank Street approach. And I have to tell you, this one has some serious New York City pedigree and a fascinating history that spans over a century. Bank Street was founded in 1916 by Lucy Sprague Mitchell, a visionary educator who believed that children learn best through direct experience with the world. She was way ahead of her time, influenced by John Dewey's progressive education philosophy and driven by the belief that education should help children become thoughtful, engaged citizens who make a positive change in the world. The approach is formally called developmental interaction, which basically means that the learning happens through the interaction between a child's developmental needs and their environment. including people, materials, and experiences. It sounds academic, but it's actually beautifully child-centric and practical. Here's what makes Bank Street unique. Social studies is the heart of everything. But we're not talking about memorizing state capitals or historical dates. We're talking about children exploring the world around them in ever-widening circles, starting with themselves and their families, then their neighborhood, their city, and eventually the wider world. In a Bank Street preschool, you might see children taking walking trips around their neighborhood to see how bread is made at a local bakery, or mapping the route from school to the park, or interviewing the crossing guard about her job. These aren't field trips, they're integral parts of the curriculum that help children understand how their community works and their place within it. Block building is huge in Bank Street programs, and I mean seriously huge. Children use unit blocks to recreate their neighborhood, build cities, and represent their understanding of how spaces work. These aren't just free play activities, they're carefully supported investigations that develop spatial reasoning, mathematical concepts, and social studies understanding all at the same time. The classroom environment reflects this emphasis on real-world learning. You'll see lots of maps, photographs of the local community, artifacts from different cultures, and materials that connect to ongoing studies. Children's work is displayed not just because it's cute, but because it represents their understanding of important concepts. Mixed age grouping is common in Bank Street programs, with children often staying with the same teacher for multiple years. This creates deep, stable relationships and allows teachers to really understand each child's developmental journey. The teacher becomes a trusted guide who knows exactly where each child has been and where they're headed. Play is also absolutely essential, but it's what educators call purposeful play. Children aren't just playing house, they're exploring family roles and community connections. They're not just building with blocks, they're representing their understanding of how structures work and how people use spaces. Teachers observe this play carefully and use it to inform their planning. The approach to learning is integrated rather than divided into separate subjects. When children are studying their neighborhood, they're naturally incorporating reading, writing, math, science, and art. They might measure distances, read street signs, write letters to community workers, observe how traffic lights work, and create maps or models of what they've learned. Assessment in Bank Street programs focuses on observing children's thinking processes rather than testing specific skills. Teachers document children's questions, hypotheses, and problem-solving strategies. They're looking for evidence of intellectual engagement, social growth, and developing understanding rather than mastery of predetermined skills. Family and community involvement is essential to the Bank Street approach. Families are seen as children's first teachers and valuable resources for learning. Community members are regularly invited to classrooms to share their expertise, and children's studies often involve interviewing parents, grandparents, and neighbors about their experiences and knowledge. Now, let's talk about the cost, because Bank Street programs are often found in private schools and can be quite expensive. You're looking at $15,000 to $20,000 annually, sometimes more in major cities. This reflects the small class sizes, highly trained teachers, and resource-rich environments that characterize quality Bank Street programs. Most Bank Street programs offer both half-day and full-day options. The core program usually includes those neighborhood explorations, extensive block work, and integrated learning experiences. Full-day programs typically add rest time, additional outdoor play, and sometimes specialized classes in art, music, or movement. What's included in tuition usually covers all materials for projects and investigations, those neighborhood walking trips, and often meals prepared on site. Some schools include enrichment activities and family events as part of the community building aspect of the approach. Who thrives in Bank Street? Well, curious children who love exploring and investigating do incredibly well. Kids who are natural questioners and problem solvers are in their element. Children who enjoy collaborative work and building relationships with adults thrive in the family-like atmosphere. And interestingly, children who might struggle with more academic approaches often shine when learning is connected to real experiences. The approach works beautifully for families who value critical thinking, social awareness, and civic engagement. If you want your child to develop into someone who understands how the world works and feels capable of making positive changes, Bank Street is designed for exactly that goal. But it might not be the best fit for families who want structured academic preparation or clear skill-building progressions. If you're looking for letter of the week curricula or systematic phonics instruction, Bank Street will feel too loose and unstructured. Children who thrive on routine and predictability might find the project-based emergent aspects unsettling. When evaluating Bank Street programs, look for evidence of those community connections. Do you see photos and maps of the local neighborhood? Are there signs that children have been out exploring their world? Ask about recent studies or investigations. Teachers should be able to describe in detail how children's interests led to specific learning experiences. Pay attention to the block area too. It should be extensive and well used, with evidence that children's constructions are valued and sometimes left up for extended work. Ask about documentation of children's learning. Bank Street teachers should be skilled at observing and recording children's thinking processes. But here's what's really powerful about Bank Street when it's done well. Children develop a sense of connection to their community and confidence in their ability to understand and improve the world around them. They become skilled observers, thoughtful questioners, and collaborative problem solvers. They learn that their ideas matter, and that learning is something you do with and for others, not just by yourself. The transition to elementary school is usually smooth for Bank Street children because they've developed strong thinking skills, curiosity about the world, and comfort with investigating topics in depth. They're prepared, not just academically, but as engaged learners who expect school to be meaningful and connected to real life. All right, that wraps up our deep dive into philosophy-based preschools. I know that was a lot of information, but here's the thing. Understanding these different approaches is going to make your decision so much clearer. Let me give you a quick recap to help it all stick. Montessori is about child-directed learning with those amazing hands-on materials, perfect for independent kids who love making choices. Waldorf protects childhood with imagination, creativity, and no early academics, ideal for artistic, sensitive children who need time to develop naturally. Reggio Emilia treats children as researchers with that gorgeous environment and project-based learning. Fantastic for curious, expressive kids and highly involved families. HighScope gives you the best of both worlds with that plan, do, review structure. Great for children who need some guidance, but also want control over their learning. And Bank Street connects everything to the real world through community exploration and social studies. Perfect for natural investigators who want to understand how everything works. Here's your homework before we move on to the next module. And yes, I'm giving you homework again. Think about which of these approaches resonated with you. Not just intellectually, but in your gut. Could you see your child thriving in one of these environments? Could you see yourself embracing the philosophy? Also, start paying attention to how your child naturally learns and plays. Do they love organizing and categorizing things like a little Montessori child? Are they always creating elaborate imaginative scenarios like a Waldorf kid? Do they ask endless questions and want to investigate everything like a Reggio researcher? Do they love making plans and seeing them through like a HighScope student? Or are they constantly wanting to understand how the world works like a Bank Street explorer? In our next module, we're going to look at mainstream and chain programs, the Goddards and the Kindercares of the world. These might not have the philosophical depth we just explored, but they serve millions of families and have their own strengths and considerations. Plus, they're often more accessible and affordable than some of these specialized approaches. But before we move on, take a moment to appreciate what we just covered. These aren't just different ways to keep kids busy during the day. These are fundamentally different beliefs about how children learn, what childhood should look like, and what kind of people we want to raise. So, it's pretty amazing stuff, right?